All right, so we are recording. How you doing, Pat?
I'm doing excellent, Jake. Thanks for having me, and I'm excited to chat with you. I've been watching a ton of your videos, so it's kind of weird to now be in the position of being interviewed by you. I'm excited.
Well, it's nice to get a chance to talk to you. I'm really interested in talking to you for a number of reasons. I first of all, I really like what you're doing on your channel in the storytelling. I really like what you're doing with the camera work, and just
Thank
like the
you.
beauty of the cards. I honestly think that that's the area that's probably most missing in the space is doing some more interesting things actually with camera work. Because even the people with sort of the best studios and the best lighting, it can be sort of kind of repetitive. They're doing it just in one space. So I'm interested to see kind of what you do with that. I'm
Sure.
also very interested in talking to people who are newer into this but are very passionate. Because I think there are a lot of people in that boat who are very smart and bright like you, who are thoughtful, who have experiences in investing and are interested in investing, but also have interest in collecting, and where kind of all those things, intersect, and kind of picking your brain. Because I actually think I know I've heard you say, and you said to me before we started that, you're not an expert, so there's concern about bringing value there. But I actually think the greatest value you can bring is sharing your mindset, because I think your mindset is going to be a lot of people's mindset out there right now, if that makes
Cool.
sense, because of where you lay in the hobby.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. And in case you don't know who I am, my name is Pat Flynn. I'm mostly known in the world of entrepreneurship, helping people with everything from email marketing to podcasting to blogging and that sort of thing. I have a number of books that are out there. I've been on stages before. Like this Pokemon stuff is new for me.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is when I started my channel, I really wanted to. It's tough because whenever you see and you're involved in a community and you get interested in something, you see what everybody else is doing. And I saw Rev doing pack openings. I see Leonhardt doing this crazy stuff with some old vintage stuff, and he's more of an entertainer. And then you got people like yourself and SM Pratt who are going deep into the investing and stuff. There's also other people from all over the world really doing it in their own way. And I'm like, okay, well, what can I bring? What's different? Because I just don't want to do what other people are doing. Because in business, if you're doing what everybody else is doing, you're going to be second at best, if not just seems a copycat. So I was like, okay, if I'm going to bring anything to this space, what can I bring? And I pulled from my sort of entrepreneurial experience, and I said, you know what, like the investing side is definitely interesting to me because there's money moving in all kinds of different ways within this space. And that's one of the initial draws that brought me to Pokemon in general. On top of that, the cinematography, the videos. I've been doing YouTube since 2009 and not the expert or perfect at it, but I'm continually getting better. And I noticed, like you said, there was a big hole in the Pokemon space with these cards that we love to look at and then we stare at all day. The videos just don't do them justice. And I was like, okay, although it's harder for me because I could pop on a video on my webcam and just easily talk about it, I want to showcase these things and not make it about me, actually. I want to make it about the cards. I want to make it about the story behind them and trying to showcase that. And I'm experimenting still, but I've gotten a lot of comments on my few videos I have already of that it's just stuff that they've never seen before and stuff that they've never noticed with even cards that they've held in their hands, because I can get in with a really cool probe lens and get super detailed. And, a lot of time and effort and care and art is put into this. And I think a lot of us just kind of flip through the packs and just kind of wait to get that hit and that's it. And I think that's not great because, what about all the commons and uncommons? I mean, I know we want that rare card, but there's some art and effort put into those other cards too. So I'm trying to showcase those kinds of things. And I have some plans to sort of go deep into the art and the artists and whatnot. And I think that's
Awesome.
interesting. But like what really drew me in was definitely combining my love for video games with the Pokemon. And it actually happened last year. I was in England with a friend of mine. He and his kid were getting into Pokemon, and his son was opening packs, and my son got into it too. So this is very much driven from my kids as well. And anytime my kids are doing something, I don't want to just like watch them do it. I want to be in it with them. This happened with Fortnite. Like my son and I, we ended up doing a whole bunch of tournaments and stuff, like just because we got into it so great. And it's a great bonding experience, right? Plus, it allows me to speak the same language. And it's not going to be like, I mentioned this on Radar's chat when I was with him. It was like, my dad was always there watching me. He was there at every soccer game, watched me play every instrument, whatever. But he was never doing it with me.
Mhm.
To me, I want to do these things with my kids. Now, unfortunately, I also have this very sort of go all in approach with things. So when I got into Pokemon with my kids, I'm like, okay, let's go deep. And so here we are. And I bought this card that I loved. I loved the look of it. I actually have it right here. I'll show it to you. And it was this card right here. I know many people in the audience watching know this card. This is the Mario Pikachu 2016 promo in Kyoto when the Pokemon Center there. And there were these boxes that came out, and it just was this huge deal. Now, I love Mario. I'm a huge video game nerd, been playing games ever since Nintendo came out. And now being into Pokemon, I was like, I just need to get this card. I actually love this card. And I got the whole set, the full arts, the half arts, for $600 total. If anybody's been keeping up with the market these days, you might see that these things are now being sold for 4, 5, 6. There's some buy it nows for 8. Those are crazy, but it could get up to there. And when I heard that the market was going crazy and the whole Logan Paul stuff was setting things on fire, I was just like, wow, this is like appreciating quite a lot. What else do I have in my collection? I didn't have much, but I said, okay, well, let me dive in and learn more about this space. And that's exactly what I'm doing. And I'm kind of doing this real time on the Pokemon channel because I'm learning with everybody. And that I positioned it that way in my intro video. I'm not the expert. All I know is a Bulbasaur from base set is not $30,000. Like that's my extent to, and that's the meme, of course. And I'm not going to say that anymore.
Although I'm going to say one thing here that people are actually giving him a little bit too hard of a time on that, because he actually slipped in. I actually rewatched the clip recently. And this is totally not on you. Every single person.
No. This is. I'm curious.
But just because it's interesting, I literally just rewatched the clip. He said BGS possibly, which theoretically maybe in his head he was thinking Black Label.
Black Label, right?
And now he said 10, 20, 30. At the time, probably 10,000 would have been reasonable-ish for a Black Label, considering the Bulbasaurs were going for like 2,000 to 3,000. Mm-hmm. It's possible. I mean, he misspoke a lot. You shouldn't be saying 10, 20, 30,000. You shouldn't be saying, these prices are going to quadruple and continue to go up forever, no matter what. I mean, he did lots of things, but I just because you were saying that, I do think it's interesting that, me trying to get into his head in the moment, kind of where that got away from him or how that happened.
For sure. You're absolutely right. I need to go and rewatch it too. And, it's important to empathize with people, and he was in the moment and whatnot, but, meme culture is a thing. And absolutely. I purposefully put that in my video, knowing other people who were into Pokemon would go, oh, okay, well, at least this guy who's new to the space kind of knows a little bit, or he seems to be involved in some way. So that was purposeful, but
for sure.
a little bit of a strategy. But I mean, to that point, in my several months of diving deep, literally every day, watching Pokemon videos, like the way I'm confused. I'm just going to be straight up. Should I be that Pokemon YouTuber who talks about get this card because the price is going up and, or the market's crashing, sell? I don't think I'm not yet knowledgeable enough to say those kinds of things. And I don't know if other people who are talking about prices are either, because, and there's this whole idea of like YouTuber fanatics who then drive the market up or down based on certain, like I stepped into this because I like it and it's entertaining and it's fun and it's exciting. And because money is involved, I find that there's another layer to this thing that has me questioning, not others. I mean, anybody can do whatever they want here on YouTube. And I think it's important that we as viewers are just conscious about what we do and why. But it's hard because it's human nature to go, wow, okay, that's going up, buy now, when we don't actually do things. And I got caught up in this myself. I got caught up in the whole November, October situation where prices were skying, and am I going to miss out on this opportunity to get this unlimited Charizard at this price? And, I bought high, and it's kind of just sitting here waiting. And to me, it's a lesson because it's like, okay, let's be smart. Let's be calculated. So in my videos, I think I want to showcase the story. I want to showcase the card and just talk about how I feel and what I think about it. But in for example, my Dialga EX video, the silver card, there was no like, oh, you should go buy this card now. Or I think this is a great investment opportunity for everybody. This is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm doing. And I need to be more explicit with this, like a lot of people who talk about finance and investing are here on YouTube, because I follow a lot of Tesla stuff. I'm a Tesla investor.
Yeah.
It's like, this is just my opinion. You have to do your own research. And I think that's so important for everybody, especially the young guys and gals in Pokemon, because I'm just seeing it all the time. Like, people spending money probably where they shouldn't be spending money.
Yeah.
And I also want to educate what I'm learning about at the same time too. Sorry, that's a lot of stuff, but
No, it's great. Can I unpack a little bit of that with you?
Unpack away. Let's unbox it.
So yeah, so glad you brought all that stuff up. It's a lot of the stuff, that I talk about and think about, of course. I think that when I looked at like the crypto space and I studied like what was happening there, where I look at, people talking about Tesla and hyping that stock up, or hyping other stocks up, or hyping, it's not hype, but pushing stocks down out of fear or whatever.
Right.
I think one thing to say is there's a reality of human beings that we just seem to be. And I was talking about this with James from ZNG yesterday in our live stream together, that we seem to do worse on average than if we just pick stocks or pick things at random. Generally human beings, when you look at these studies, because we have a tendency as human beings to follow hype, to follow mobs, to follow what other people are saying and doing. Mm-hmm. And I think that is what makes it so dangerous, like YouTube channels talking about finance, because there's this like self-fulfilling thing that happens, right? Where like, a big YouTuber talks about this card and maybe gives some like really good opinions or some really good thoughts and advice about it. But then the card goes up way more than it should off of that, because he has so much influence and so much reach that now, a month before it actually was a good buy. Like when the person was talking about it, there actually was good value in it. But now it's moved up so much, not based on, what might make sense in some sort of value, any sort of evaluation we're going to make of the card. And, we might make that valuation based on, let's compare it to other cards that maybe should have a similar value. Or, when we look at like the how old it is, how rare it is, how mint it is, and we say, well, this card was, if I ran down that value assessment, this card a month ago was a great deal. But now that these three YouTubers talked about it, it no longer is. So, right. Whose responsibility is that? I think it's everyone's, to be honest. Like, I think clearly the people buying this need to be responsible for their own money and need to be responsible for whether they decide to listen to YouTubers or not. But I also think that YouTubers hold, or influencers or any kind hold a responsibility. I mean, we can talk about Jim Cramer talking about stocks. We could talk about, anyone talking about stocks. We could talk about we could talk about Standards and Poor. We can talk about, anyone making these evaluations, right?
MKBHD, one of the biggest tech YouTuber reviewers here on the channel. I got to interview him, and he's awesome. He mentions a product. It's going to sell out.
Exactly.
He talks negatively about a product. It's going to crash and burn the entire company, right? It's kind of crazy. And you're so right. And with James as well about the whole, that's how humans are. Yes. I once heard recently that like the best performing stocks, I can't remember exactly the intricacies of the study, but it was like the best performing stocks in a company's portfolio was actually those who were actually ran by people who actually died.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
They didn't have the ability, obviously, to sell or buy. Right?
So they didn't panic when it went down.
Exactly.
They didn't sell it when it went down, and they didn't buy more when they shouldn't have when it went up. Or whatever.
Exactly. And part of what's helped me in the world of Tesla as an investor in Tesla is like typically when things are going downhill, and it's it's going on this nice uphill rise right now, but there's been moments where there's panic, right?
Yep.
And to me, the success comes from, okay, everybody's panicking. What does this present as far as an opportunity for me, if, one way or another? And usually I'm like, oh, great. These stocks are now on sale, right? So when there's like a crash, I'm like, okay, cool. These are on sale. If I do believe in the long-term vision of the company and its ability to come back and sort of perform, especially long-term. So that's what I love about stocks. Like I know about these companies. I'm a business-minded person. Yeah. I understand their balance sheet and stuff. That's where I feel so lost in the Pokemon space, right? Part of me feels like maybe I'll be more successful. In fact, if I do like what they did in that study where there were monkeys who picked stocks and theirs were more successful than humans. There was another one similarly. It's so crazy. Maybe I should just pick cards at random and like hold, and maybe I'll be more successful than if I just like get with the fervor and the excitement and stuff. But it's hard because you're right. We as people, we look to leaders. We look for help. We look for advice from others who have been there before.
Yeah.
And especially on YouTube with how, great a person is on stage or on a microphone or what have you. I mean, there was another study that was done where like this guy, he just dressed in a white coat to pretend to be a doctor.
Yeah.
And like people were like listening for what medicine to take from a person who was not qualified just because they wore a white coat. By the way, how many times have we seen, I think actually Essen Pratt did this. This is not clowning him, but I've watched an old video where he was actually wearing a white coat to try and be like Professor Oak probably. But anyway.
Yeah, the jackets that people have. I think those are from, or some of them are from being judges.
Oh, no way. Okay.
Yeah, and have a like specific relationship to Pokemon, I think. Yeah, it's. I think that where I sort of land on all of that, bringing it back to sort of us, or like what you were talking about, like what can you do in all of that? I think that to me, it's about teaching the skills to me, it's about value investing. And it's about teaching every person who watches their own critical thinking skills to try and figure out their way of determining value in Pokemon, in stocks, in whatever it is, and then actually following through on that plan rather than telling them these are the 5 cards to buy. So I think when you make a video about the Dialga and you explain, well, I bought this because they're only 42, or whatever it was, 45, whatever the pop report was in the world, people don't seem to be talking about it that much. I think it's a bit underhyped. Those are actually explaining to people how you are assessing value. And that to me is actually teaching people how to do it themselves in a lot of ways. Now, there are going to be people who listen to that and are not going to learn how to assess value. They're just going to start buying that Dialga because Pat Flynn bought it. And what can you do like to mitigate that? I think probably repeat a lot, like, hey guys, like you shouldn't do that. A lot of times, and I think that this gets into the difference between momentum investing to some degree and value investing. And, this is butchering momentum investing a little bit, but, I think part of momentum investing and part of why it works so well is because it understands and makes money on hype. Like take those dumb money guys, right? They make all of their money on momentum investing. They don't actually look at they look at what people are talking about on social media and they invest in that because they believe that all that talk on social media is going to help them make money, and it's effective and it works because people that's how people work. That's
the answer, because people
right.
You're right. I mean, with the Wall Street beats and like all these things and just, man, those guys, I mean, it works for them. But for me, if number one, if I'm going to be telling somebody something, I want to have experience with it. Number one. Yeah. Number two, I don't know how I'd be able to sleep at night in some cases if I know other people are losing money or making irrational decisions because of me, which is, again, part of the conundrum of, well, but you're on YouTube talking about cards. And I think it goes back to like what you said. If I could even go deeper into the lessons learned and the why, not just the what, but the why, right? And, with the Dialga, for example, when I saw the numbers, first of all, it caught my attention, number one.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself is, oh, okay, that's interesting. And I've never seen that before. Why? And then I go deeper and I see it's in Phantom Forces, which is a popular set. And there's this card, 122, Secret Rare, all silver, super hard to grade, 46 population. There's a Japanese version from Hyperchain Metal. Like I'm literally doing this research and I at least now can go, okay, so what does all this mean now to me? Yeah. Like, is it worth my money to go and part of me, and many times I do research. I'm like, no, that's, I don't see that. It's not even just about, oh, I think this is going to make money. Like, I don't know if I'm going to sell this, but at least I know it has value because I have done the research. And here now is what you can do, right? There might be some other cards. And I've noticed some other things, like you mentioned, the Lucky Stadium. And, it's not just like this whole waifu movement that's happening right now with full art trainers. That is definitely, like the Jesse and James full art was once $2 and now it's like $19, $20 on eBay. And I don't know necessarily the origin of that, but I think, it's just caught wind and now it's kind of ridiculous. So
I think it's a combination of both that, because when I first saw that card, I liked it.
Mm-hmm.
True. Like I liked the way it looked. So I think it's
like they're like this on the card. It's kind of a funky.
Jesse and James, and like I don't really have, I think that there was an underdeveloped cool cards for some of the favorite like early anime Game Boy game characters. I think it's why Red's Pikachu did so. I think that we also have connections to those characters, not just the Pokemon. Right. And so there's stuff to be said about that, I think, but also like we live in a world of supply and demand. and some of these cards, just the amount of supply, but that's a whole nother thing. And these these buyout groups, not so underground buyout groups that are showing up and trying to make huge moves on these types of cards, that are creating these artificial markets, short-term markets. They're really effective because people are so, and this is why I made videos 4 or 5 months ago, really warning people about the maturity of the Pokemon market and the people here, because every time a new price was, successfully hit, everyone would say that's what it's worth now, or that's what it should be worth, or the next one should go more, and so it's these types of things that I've basically been taught by my father, by every book I've read, to watch out for. You have to keep your instincts often in check, and often do the opposite as a value investor, and go to the numbers and the rationality. So I think that what I try to do, and what I believe you should do, honestly, is you want to increase people's agency, the way that I think about it, to make their own decisions rather than increasing their dependence on you. And I think as an influencer, like that's the key. And it's so difficult. And it's true as a therapist too, by the way, or as a doctor or anything, because you make a lot of money when people are dependent on you in a lot of ways, or can make a lot of money, whether they're dependent on you for their dopamine hit of just hearing you speak, or they're dependent on you to be soothing or a calming force in their life. As a therapist, the goal is actually to be that for a short term, but help them develop agency and the ability to do that themselves, and then create their own networks in their own life. And I actually think that those skills and that idea it should also be the goal for, teachers like you. I view you honestly as a teacher. I think what you're doing is teaching people. When I've seen your streams, and you're very analytical, and you go into sort of why I networked there, what I was going to get out of that. And I think ideally, right, that actually gives people the skills to have the agency to do that for themselves in their own lives. And that's very different than what I see a lot, which is I'm the only one, come back to me. I have the answers. And I'm not just going to, I'm not going to, you can only come back here. I'm the expert. I'm actually the only expert. I'm the only one, those types of vibes. And I think that when you have a community of people who really can argue and disagree, that to me is a sign of actually a lot of agency. And when you have communities of like who say that the person that they watch is like a saint, and if anyone attacks them, they get furious. Like that's the type of stuff that I see as that cult of personality stuff. And so I know we're jumping ahead to some of the stuff I wanted to talk about, but
no, it's true though. I mean, that's where you get the sort of symptoms within a community. And, I'm not here to clown or talk about anybody. And I absolutely love the Pokemon community. They've been so warm and welcoming. And, I have seen, in fact, I saw a comment on Pokemon Radar's interview with me of somebody who was like, yeah, I kept seeing this Pat Flynn guy in all the comments on all the Pokemon channels. And I felt like it was like I had no idea why the heck he was doing that. But then now that I hear about it, I'm like, yeah, he just wants to help others. And that's how you get ahead. And that's how I've always gotten ahead. Serve first. I always come from a serve first approach. So with PokeRev, for example, who interestingly enough,
you don't just want to help others. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you, Pat. You also want to succeed and build something for yourself in this.
Yes, but the purpose and the only thing I'm focusing on is helping others at the start. I do want that to develop into something, but the moment I go, ooh, that guy is gonna give me links, or this person, I'm gonna target them because they're gonna give this back to me. No. This person has influence. What do they need? What are they into right now? What do they need help on? For example.
But why did Ian Hart reach out to Katy Perry? to try to get her on her channel? Why did Leon Hart reach out to Logan? For clout, for connection, and also because it's fun and it's a great experience. I don't think I don't think there's anything wrong with that necessarily. But if people are, I think what worries me more is like, we can't as human beings talk about that without people getting very heated. And so, so I did the same thing on my channel, right? Like I brought in a lot of the biggest Pokemon experts in the space because people didn't know who I was, even though I had one of the bigger collections in the world, and seeing me on screen right next to them is going to associate that I'm an expert too, or they should trust 100%. Me too, even before I've said anything. And so you getting to know, PokeRev and having him comment on your video, like when people see that, when people see your check mark, it tunes them into that you are someone that we should listen to. Right. And of course. And I think that's earned one for sure on some degree and takes hard work and intelligence. But I think it's like, and I think where I imagine you think about is like getting from that point to then providing value. And what you're talking about is like focusing on providing, people value immediately, other people value, that you're not just here, you're going to go into those spaces and you're going to tell me or Pokemon Radar, here's a way that you could do your camera setup better, actually really helping people in that sense. And sorry, I cut you off a couple of times, but
no, that's okay. I mean, there's a lot there for sure. Let's keep going on this. I mean, for me, I always know that nobody's ever gotten poor by helping others get what they want. That was a Zig Ziglar quote. And so in my business experience, whenever there's money or some other agenda involved, there's always going to be some sort of tonation of disingenuine sort of effort. And again, people make deals, people connect with people knowing that there's clout and such. I mean, I know a good friend of mine who created an entire multi-million-dollar business as a result of bringing well-known people in the entrepreneurial space onto their stages. And they, as a result, have grown too. A good friend of mine, John Lee Dumas, who's a founder of Entrepreneurs on Fire, he is interviewed 3,000 entrepreneurs on his podcast. And as a result, through association, has become very popular, and it's also seen as an entrepreneur as well.
Yeah.
And so you're definitely right. Like when PokeRev left a comment on my channel, obviously I'm stoked. I know that that's going to help show more clout. Oh, this guy knows PokeRev. Cool. So of course I'm going to pin that. I'm a marketer.
Yeah.
But at the same time, first of all, I did not ask for that, and I earned it, I felt. But number two, I also know that the check mark, the social proof, Rev putting the number of subscribers like right on his video, to, you bringing a celebrity on to your podcast.
Yeah.
Like we need to do that to get attention.
We do.
Because there's so much noise.
There's so much noise.
You have to upkeep that attention that you began, and you need to earn the right for a person to keep coming back and stick around. And that's if like, you can clickbait all day, but if a person clicks on your video and it's like not worthwhile, and even though you had the right person on, and even though you have all this clout, like people are smart, right? Although people are often sort of considered sheep in the regards to the way that we've talked about the way people make decisions and such, people are often also very, very smart, and they can read through things super quickly. And so for me, it's like, let me show up and provide as much value as I can, so much so that people notice and they go, that's weird, which people have. But when I go and I reach out to some of these Pokemon creators and I'm like, hey, with like Squeaks, for example, Squeaks, who is often with Radar and they have a show together, collectible conversations and such. Squeaks and I have now developed a relationship because he knew that I had really good videos on mine. And he's like, hey, can you help me a little bit with some of the, videos and the microphones and stuff? And I poured into that. I was like, let me spend 30 minutes helping this guy out, asking for nothing in return. And what happens? He goes, if there's anything I can do for you, you let me know.
Yeah.
And I find that the more interested I get in other people, the more interested they get back. And I think that you're right with
how to win friends and influence people.
Dude,
right?
I have that book right behind me. It's so massive. And when you can like stop trying to be so interesting and start getting interested in others, I mean, the law of reciprocity is real. They're going to want to help you out back. And that's always been the backbone of how I do business, how I teach business is, you could serve others, and yes, you can sell and serve at the same time. You can sell and know that you're going to get something back, but unless it's not true, genuine wanting to help people, it's not going to work, in my opinion, in the long run.
Yeah. I mean, I like you. I think that you're smart and savvy. You know, I've watched a number of your videos in preparation for this conversation. I wouldn't sit down and talk to you if I didn't respect you on some level and like you. You know, I don't know you personally. You don't know me. You know,
No, this
obviously.
is us getting to know each other right now.
Exactly. You know, and I think that, you know, I think a lot of this is my own interest, of course, in these topics, but I also think that it's so crucial. I do, you know, I have these, and I've always felt this since I was a little kid. So let me talk a little bit myself as
Yeah, please.
as a little kid, stuff I haven't said on the channel. So I remember being in like 5th and 6th grade, and I had like a group of friends, and I was like in the popular group before, right, kind of around the time or before things became, people started caring about popularity.
Mm.
And then I remember things just radically shifting, and it was almost like we started developing the idea of like how to social maneuver, you know, in sort of that middle school period. And I remember realizing pretty quickly how just confidence got you so far in everything, when, like, if you didn't know what you were doing or what you were talking about in social situations. And I always had a brain or a personality where I was thinking about this stuff, you know, right away, you know, when this stuff happened. And I think it's really, you know, it's the same types of concepts that I think about as an adult. It's like, you know, why do people listen to others? You know, why do people buy people's programs? Why do people do these sorts of things? Are people good at separating what's valuable for them from the charisma, from the content, separating the surface, you know, or the style, we could say, from the substance underneath? And I genuinely feel like you are passionate about substance, or I wouldn't be talking to you, honestly, because I would just be like, this is, you know, this, I don't feel like we're going to have an interesting, good conversation, or he's going to be really angry at me, right? He's going to be violent, or have a really strong negative response. And so, but I think that you're also very aware of how important style is, and how important connections are, and how important branding is, and all, and marketing. And so am I, right? Like, whether I choose to do it or not, like I see those things, and I've always seen those things. You know, I was a very successful poker player, and
Nice.
other sorts of things. It's the same type of stuff, right? It's being able to see those angles. And then it's like, do you play that game? Do you not play that game? And then how do you make sure that the other person, even if you're playing some of that game, how do you make sure that it's worth it for the other people? And so what you said, you know, was something I was thinking about. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to have a channel at all if I don't connect with these people and go into E4 and do this. And I think I have something really important to say. So I'm willing to do some of that stuff early on to get big enough. Mm. And then I'm not going to, you know, I'm going to try to not do that as much, or I'm going to change, I'm going to tighten up my ethics or my morals around what you know, how much I'm going to search clout and what I'm willing to do. And I think that that's the type of thing that I think is so interesting and important, probably for people to think about it, you know, in this space. You know, what are they willing to do, right, to grow their channel, to grow their following, to seek that clout? Can you, you know, I mean, you are a much more experienced person than me. I'm such a newbie. So I do want to hear your response to all that stuff. And if you're willing to share kind of what your journey has been in that, because I'm sure that you've thought about that a lot, these types of concepts.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a lot, obviously, and this just continues the conversation about psychology and what gets people to move, and where's that line, right? Where's that line between, you know, showing up, getting all the fancy things, and, you know, I do have the fancy equipment and whatnot, and that drawing people in, and then, you know, what is my end game here? What is my goal? And we'll talk about probably plans for the channel and sort of where my position is and what I'm doing a little bit later. But it's interesting because I remember I was on one of your live streams early on. It was probably the first time I saw you, and I was like, Jake, your content's really good, but like, or no, I don't even think I was commenting on it. Somebody else was, about like your camera, and it was like super low, looking up, and this is like the worst camera angle to have. No offense, like looking upward
no offense taken. and my face right now, I am shrouded in a shadow instead of having the light in a good place.
but you have this beautiful painting behind you, which makes up for a lot of it, so it's all good. But and I think you said your father was a painter, a collector, or something like that. Anyway,
yeah.
So you had commented, you're like, yeah, you know, I know I could get better with the quality here. I know I could have a better camera, better audio, but you know what? Like, I just I just want to show up and provide value to you, which you have been. But it's interesting because in this online space, there are going to be people, I'm just telling you, Jake, who go to your video and they're like,
Oh yeah.
oh, look at the quality of this. Like, I'm not going to sit and listen to this guy for 2 hours. And are you best serving your audience by saying, you know what, I don't care about the video, right? So I'm kind of flipping it on you now.
I agree with you completely, Pat. I think you're right on there. My response is that I am not tech savvy at all. I was never really planning on doing this that long. I'm really a therapist, and that's my career. You know, I'm a social worker, and you know, and now I'm in this position of like, how much do I enjoy this? Do I want to do it? Do I want to reach more people? Do I want to monetize it in a way that feels ethical so that it fulfills a certain, like, you know, like I have like a dream, right, of maybe I could make $2,000 to $4,000 a month on this, and then every dollar over that I could give to charity, or 90% over it I could give to charity, where I feel like people know that I'm giving the money to charity, which keeps I think the reality of who I am in the channel. Like, I don't lose myself in it, honestly. Because I feel tempted to grow my channel. Like, I feel tempted to do things, to reach out to people, to search clout. Everything I'm talking about, of course, I see those things, and I wonder, and I get frustrated when my channel isn't growing as much as I think it should be, or, you know, I see other channels grow when I know that I've made a lot more money than them, when my analytics are much better, when my information, you know, that type of thing. But it all comes down to a couple of things. One is, I think, very clearly the camera, the fact I have no Pokemon background, all that sort of stuff for sure. But, you know, two, I think it's that I'm not telling people what to buy. I'm not doing those top 5 videos. I'm not doing those hype simple videos. You know, I think a lot of people come onto YouTube for an answer, right? They type in, I want what Pokemon card I should buy, and they don't want to hear someone do a deep dive. They want that, you know, right, that answer, right? Immediate.
I mean, on your channel, the people viewing, I know this question's been asked several times. I have $500. What should I buy? And you always have a good way of sort of gracefully deflecting that and not basically just telling people what to do. But at the same time, you're right. People want answers. And for me, when I got into this space, I've gone to all the Pokemon YouTubers to look for answers as far as where should I start? Not what should I buy, but at least just like give me some headway in terms of where should I be focusing, and just basically starting to build that muscle, right? The investor muscle, which takes time. And it might mean you might make some mistakes here and there, but so long as you're conscious and always trying to improve, then you're going to get better. So I feel like lately I've been making pretty good decisions. I made some poor ones up front, and I feel like there's always going to be new opportunities, which means I don't have to rush anything. That's the other thing too. The FOMO aspect, the fear of missing out, is more prevalent in Pokemon than it is in entrepreneurship. And it's huge in entrepreneurship because there's business ideas and you're like, I have to act now. And then you get into the wrong thing. With Pokemon, you might miss out on, you know, your special delivery Pikachu is gone, or you're gonna have to pay 4x now. So, you know, it's like there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on for sure. But I would it would behoove you, I from my perspective, to have some level of ability to capture people's attention with the quality in the first minute, to get them to go, oh, I like this guy, right? And you have such good info. You're talking about things in a way nobody else is really. Yeah. And you're taking all these risks. Like, if your channel grew because you got attention quicker and you had better quality stuff, imagine how much more money can go to this charity that you're focusing on.
Yeah, that's what my girlfriend always says to me. She says, Jake, why don't you, like, she's like, instead of becoming a social worker, why didn't you become full-time, like your father, try to make $50 million basically, and then you could do more for people that way than you could do by the individual work you do daily. And I think that it's a constant thing that I question and battle. I think that I actually have my own psychological issues with making money because so many people don't have money, and it's not rational, because if I made money or did those sorts of things, I could give them that money, like they're, or,
Right.
whatever, try to figure something out with that. I think it's why I'm so fascinated with, people. And I've said, I know you mentioned that you're friends with Gary Vee, and I've had some negative, concerns about him, that I've talked about on my channel. But one thing and it could all be a bunch of BS, my stuff. And I don't really know him, and I could be wrong, and was using him as sort of something that I'm kind of afraid of generally, which is cult of personality. Mm-hmm. And people basically becoming attached to social media figures who say slogans, and they get their dopamine rush from them. And I don't even think that's Gary's fault, because Gary, like, from my perspective, Gary's like really bright.
Oh, he knows what he's doing. And he says the same thing over and over again, because that's how people remember. So much to a point where people either love him or they hate him. And, on one hand, when you build that brand and you have these taglines and such, you're getting shared. And if you're not getting shared, you're not getting seen. And so that's sort of where Gary's coming from. And obviously he owns an agency, and I've been able to visit him at VaynerMedia, and he's great. And he's also a really good person. I mean, I bet you guys would have this amazing conversation about charities. He and I are on the board of Pencils of Promise, which builds schools all around the world.
Yeah. And that's why I was bringing his name up in my head, because I know how much charity he does. And so that's where that connection came from in my head, and understanding where that comes from for him, or did he, and so
there's a lot to unpack there too with charity. Just like, I know you would appreciate this conversation, so I'm going to bring it up. Whenever I talk about Pencils of Promise and the schools that we build, like, I feel really good about that. But at the same time, am I just saying that to have people go, oh my God, you build schools around the world, right? And with, you had just mentioned charity. I think that's awesome. And then, like, I don't know where you stand on the idea of, well, showcasing how much you've donated to look better.
Right.
Is that even bad? I mean, I am very philanthropic, and I don't talk about most of it because that's not the purpose, really.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it could also bring awareness to have more people to then, it's like, I'm curious your thoughts on this, Jake.
Yeah. So I'm Jewish, and Judaism has a lot to say about tzedakah giving, in terms of like what are the highest, like, most moral levels of giving. And I wrote a whole thesis. My thesis in school was on altruism, and does altruism exist, and trying to measure it and study it. I wrote a philosophy paper on it, but also did a study on are people good at perceiving if they're actually being helped by people, and then are people capable of what I basically called an altruistic impulse, which is that impulse to help other people, not looking for that reciprocation or cooperation. And so, for example, like, there are probably a number of times with fellow PokeTubers, let's say for you, where you've had more of a reciprocal impulse of like, I'm going to do this for them, that's going to connect to me, right? But I'm pretty sure you're a very good person just from talking to you a little bit and just watching your channels and watching you interact with people. And because of that, I know you experience altruistic impulse too. And what that is more of that pure momentary, like, I see someone in need, I have an impulse to just help, do whatever I can to decrease their suffering, basically.
Yeah, I am a 3 on the Enneagram. I don't know if you studied the Enneagram, but a 3, and this Enneagram, for those of you who don't know, it's similar to, like, Strength Finders and all these other tests, personality tests and such. But this one's really interesting because it's not just telling you, like, who you are, it's telling you why you do the things you do. Yeah. And for me as a 3, and my wife can attest to this for sure, I feel valuable, I feel worthy, I feel present when I see other people are benefiting from the things that I do for them.
Yeah.
I'm here showing up online, demonstrating this exactly, not here today, but I mean, everywhere. And this altruistic nature, I know that's a part of who I am. And you're right. It's sort of innate and it's involved, versus, like, my wife, for example, she's a 6, and a 6 is a loyalist. She's not out there seeking attention. She doesn't even have an Instagram account that is active, or YouTube or Facebook, any of this stuff. But when you get in her little circle of friends, she will go to bat for you till the death, because that's what a 6 is. And that, like, we all have different personalities. And I think it's so important to know, like, who we are and why do we do what we do. And it's also important because, and it's actually, the Enneagram has helped me and my wife get closer together, because now I understand where she's coming from. If we're in, like, an argument or something, right?
Yeah.
I can see it from her perspective now. And that's so key, right? And so, and she could see it from mine. I'm not somebody on stage trying to just, get a huge reputation and toot my horn all day. I'm doing this because that's what lifts me up and gets me excited to help even more people.
Yeah.
So anyway, you're right about me. Exactly. That's my impulse for sure.
Yeah. And if I thought you were more sociopathic, I wouldn't, I wouldn't, I
wouldn't call me out on anything. I don't care.
With you. No. And no one really knows, which is and that's part of what I'm going to respond to with your question. And what I think is so important for people out there to think critically about. Let's take Barstool Sports right now. I'm sure you're aware of what he's doing right now. Okay. Yes. So he's jumping on a cause that's going to get on Fox News, that's going to get everyone's attention. So as a marketer, you could say he knows that doing this type of charity is going to get him huge following. He's already sort of positioned himself fairly conservatively. I've been watching what he's been doing basically throughout this period. Now, is he doing that, to go back to your question, because he has a strong altruistic impulse to help struggling businesses? Is he doing that because he knows that it's going to really cement him in a lot of people's minds and hearts and further his career? Is he doing it for both? I have no idea. I think most people, it would be both, likely to some degree. There'd be both things would be considerations in that. And now here's the thing is, like, if you're not doing things selfishly and you don't have a selfish impulse, as a therapist, we would be concerned about you too, in terms of your ability to survive in the world. And so this idea of just having altruistic impulse all the time, you'll die. Right?
Yeah, no, you're right. Because you're going to give all your food to your family and then you're going to have none left for you. Right. So
literally, right? Like, and so I'm
still alive. So I guess there's a little bit of that in me, I guess.
Yeah. And so but I think that it's this discussion and showing that you and I are human beings that I hope helps people also think critically about this for themselves and understand that like everyone's in this boat. Like, we're all in this boat between in a capitalistic sort of system, which is moderately capitalistic, where we're it's a mixed economy, obviously, and how mixed it should be. And people all over the place have, different ideas about equality and fairness and how to make things equal. But that I think that in my personal opinion, all across the spectrum, conservatives, liberals, like, we're all so similar, and the vast majority of us really struggle with these exact same concepts and develop their own internal ideas about, what's right or what's wrong. But so to me, my goal, I think, in having these types of discussions is to increase people's agency to make those decisions for themselves and think about it, and decrease the groupthink.
Love that.
Yeah. And I think that it's like,
it's hard though, because it's easier said than done. I think we all know this, right? And humans, we have a ability to, when we're in a certain state of mind, to make irrational decisions. There was a book by Dan Ariely called Predictably Irrational. Just the fact we are irrational people. And when we're in either a certain state of arousal of any kind, we just make very poor decisions. And then you mix that with how beautiful these cards are, going back to Pokemon, and the excitement of opening packs, and then the endorphin that comes in. Maybe the next pack is the one, so I'm going to spend a little bit more money to get that hit. It's interesting. It's just there's so many layers to this. It's more than just cardboard, right? It's dynamics of people and economics and all these other things fitting into it. And I think, like you said, the more that we can almost put a filter on, or at least have like our reality glasses on during this thing, whatever happens, if there's another crazy break that brings more people in, or the 25-year anniversary, obviously, and they just announced today, I think, all the jumbo cards and the reprinting of base set and such, like, it's going to be crazy. And I think that, if you're unplugged from the matrix, if you will, you're going to have a better chance of survival.
Yeah. Yes. That is what I've kind of always believed. And I don't have evidence for that because I'm a 32-year-old man. That's what I hope.
Well, I'm 38 over here. I'm a little
older,
exactly.
So. So that's what I think that I've always put my money on. And this has always been another interesting topic of sort of positivity, and what I think is like what I would deem as like some degree of toxic positivity is I've always, I think, been drawn to and put my money on let's deal with what's happening and how we feel about things, but let's be like really kind and generous and honest about it and humble about it. Right. So let's not attack someone else for things that you're doing too or inside that you're also doing. Right. And let's understand that we might both be doing those things and neither of us like it that much. How can we both get better? Like, how do we talk about those things in a way that doesn't break down the communication or make it feel like one person's morally superior, and it becomes condescending. And I think that's what's, I mean, look at our politics, talk about condescending, right? Everyone condescending to everyone else. I mean, I like the level, of condescension out there rather than humility of like, these are complex problems and these are people have strong opinions. Like they have strong opinions because for really good reasons and things that are really happening in their lives on a daily basis. And it's yeah. And I think where that comes back to sort of, the Pokemon space, if we want to bring it back there, a little bit, it's how do we, I think, and for you, I think this entertainment piece, like the bringing the joy and the fun, and to piggyback off a comment that you were making before, it's like, how do you, because I think that this doesn't need to be a rational investment. Like it's okay for people to be gambling a little bit and having that self-awareness of like, this is a gamble, this is a risk. I'm not being super analytical. This isn't a really steady, firm investment that I'm focusing on. These pack openings I'm doing for fun. I watch these YouTube channels not to gain some deep insight, but I watch it because I like the people and it makes me feel good, right? It's that sort of, and that's all okay. But I think what happens is it can get lost somewhere. And I think that people can take advantage of that. And I think where I was coming from, on my channel was that I was just seeing that my great fear, and I've had people come to me that have reaffirmed this, was that there was a lot of people, young people, who were spending just tons of money, leveraging themselves on credit cards. Same thing that happened in crypto, for this get rich quick thing. And it's like, these get rich quick things are so powerful. They work so well. And when it combines like this kid gaming thing with gambling, with buying addiction, with the depression and loneliness and isolation of COVID and the storm of all of this, I was just amazed at how more people weren't concerned or worried about that in sort of the more experienced end of the hobby. And I think that it made me feel, whether this is right or wrong, it made me feel like people were either naive or willing to take advantage of that stuff going on for their own profit. And now
I haven't seen anybody really, like, in the world of online business and internet marketing. I'm definitely familiar with people who are pulling out all the stops, all the best copywriters, mansions and Lamborghinis in the background to kind of show front and just like really play on the prey that's out there, right? And in the Pokemon space, I haven't seen that, thankfully, or at least not yet. People who are quote unquote preying on those who are vulnerable. I think that you're right. It might be just naivete, or just they're naive or just not educated, and on both sides, perhaps. I don't know.
And I can be wrong about this stuff, and overreacting. So
yeah, and in the chat, I mean, if you're watching this right now, I would encourage you to sort of share your opinions as well. This is a community here, and we all have different opinions that matter, right? Yeah. And hit the like button too for Jake if you have time. For me, it's about control, like having a container and a space to do these fun things that are risky, but it's controlled, right? It's the equivalent is, and you'd mentioned gambling earlier, right? And I've been to Vegas. I'm not a gambler per se, and I used to play poker. In fact, my roommate from college is on the World Poker Tour, which is pretty cool. But if I go to a casino, right, and I'm not condoning gambling, I'm just sharing this as an example. The idea that, you could go and have a good time, and, maybe you lose your money, you go back to the ATM and you just keep going. And you just like lose it because maybe the next one, maybe the next one, maybe I'm just going to put it all in black, and then you get red. Like you just go down this hole versus when I go, I know it's entertainment with the possibility of the potential upside, but also the possibility of losing everything. So I'm going to go to a place where I might be able to gamble, and I'm going to take $200. Like I'm just throwing this number out there. I'm taking this $200 that I'm okay losing. It doesn't affect my life. It doesn't affect my kids, my family, my house, the food, car payments, etc. And I'm going to play, and I'm going to have fun. And maybe because of that, maybe I'll play some, lower limit games or something to make it last as long as possible, because it's probably going to leave, right? But either way, if I lose it all, at least I had fun. I had that approach. My ATM card's at home. I'm not even bringing it, right? Yeah. And of course, these casinos, what do? They create the environment for you to just get sucked in and forget everything. They don't have clocks anywhere. You don't have windows showing the outside where it's actually light and you've stayed up all night. So if I win, cool, like awesome, I had that chance. And I feel the same way about like opening packs and stuff, right? I have a certain amount of money that I'm like, okay, I'm investing, if you can call it that, this money in the entertainment value in opening these packs. And in many cases, I just don't have access to packs, hence why sometimes I go to Cigar, who I know is a favorite here. You interviewed him not too long ago from Royalty Gaming Pokemon. He's awesome. I've gotten to know him really well, and I've purchased some packs from him because he gets access to things I don't. But, if I get nothing, I still have fun, and I'm also supporting somebody who's really cool. So, yeah, I mean, there's so many levels to this, but
so many. And another one I'm going to throw in there is like, should we let kids be opening packs? Or is that teaching, or is that
just in general,
literally, or is that teaching kids to gamble? I mean, Rafi and I talk about this with his kids because it's looking for that hit and searching for that hit. And what's the correct level of that? I mean, there's all sorts of, and there's so many issues right now in video games, in these, and these things are designed. What excites us and brings that joy and pleasure, it's like there's that balance in there of like, where does that stay in that zone of this is good for us, this is good for me, this is good for my kids, versus bringing it out of there. And I'm certainly not saying, I'm not answering that, but I think that interestingly, you can go pretty far down that thinking and worrying about like, okay, well, what is it teaching my kid? That lots of things are stupid and common and aren't worth anything, and I should just, or am I sitting with my kid and are we appreciating the art of every Pokemon card?
Exactly. Right. I love that. That's why I want to do videos on like some of the most common cards that you see all the time, and I want to dig in. I want to learn about them, like a Weedle. What's so special about a Weedle? Well, let's dive in. I mean, there might be nothing special about a Weedle, but like that's kind of the approach on it. But to this question of like,
I would love that, by the way. I would absolutely love.
That'd be sweet, right? That'd be really cool. I mean, imagine how much content I could have if I just took every common card that everybody threw away and I just went deep with that. That would be really funny. But also at the same time, I know as a creator, people are going to click on a Charizard video more than a Weedle video.
Exactly.
So maybe there's a balance there. And again, I'm finding myself, I'm trying new things. Some of it's going to work. Some of it's going to fail. But number one, as long as I keep trying, I can hone in on what is working. And number two, if I can stay communicative with my community and the people who I seem to attract, as they say, your vibe attracts your tribe, then I can develop more content that they want, right? And that's interesting. But to go back to your point about opening packs and what this teaches our kids, I think that, I mean, I'm not here to tell anybody how to parent. I'm a parent, and me and my wife, we're a team, and we're a tag team GX together, and there's so many dad jokes that come out when you're a dad, but the approach that we take is, we offer our kids a commission for the chores that they do. If they don't do those chores, they don't get that commission. And this is meaningful because they earn that money and now it's theirs and they can do whatever they want with it, right? To a point, obviously. And many times they want to open Pokemon packs.
Yeah.
Right. And I actually am going to go a little bit deeper into this in my new video coming out very soon about, making investment strategies and such. But my son, for example, knows now that he's more likely to find joy in having the ability to go to eBay and get a specific card he needs for a collection that he's building. right? So he's building a collection of gold cards. And gold cards, thankfully, like Suspicious Tin, are not that expensive comparatively. But he might spend $20 on something like that versus knowing he's going to potentially lose $20, if you will, by buying 4 packs of Vivid Voltage and not getting any gold cards at all.
Yeah.
But then I tell him, I can see his gears going. He's like, oh, but there's this card on eBay for my collection. But at the same time, like I might get the Fat Pikachu card that I haven't pulled yet.
Yeah.
So I go, okay, well, I don't say these words specifically, but I say things like, well, what would spark the most joy for you? That's so corny. And it's a very Marie Kondo sort of organization sort of approach to it. But it's true. I'm like, okay, what would make you more happy and for the longest period of time?
Yeah.
Perhaps having the gold card. And he's usually choosing the gold cards rather than the other packs, because even if he were to pull something great, is he going to continue to look at it? Is it going to build his collection? Is it something that's going to be meaningful next week?
Yeah.
He's starting to get it. And he's only 11, but he's starting to get the fact that, okay, maybe this thing that would make me feel good for a half a second is not worth the amount of joy I would get from the collection having been built over time. And what's really cool is when he gets a new card for his collection specifically, this is what this new video is going to be talking about. The idea that the riches are in the niches, very business-like topic as well. Because with niching down, you can be more focused. You're not spending money on everything. You have a purpose, you have a goal. And every time he gets a new gold card, like he lights up. It's so like Christmas was so easy because I could just buy him some gold cards because I knew exactly what he was shooting for. And when he pulls it in a pack now, if he were, it's like, it's just the bonus. So just a little bit of insight on how the Flynn family sort of is trying to teach our kids sort of to make their own decisions, but based on sort of our coaching ability. And a lot of the way we parent is just through questions, because I want it to be like Inception, right? I want him to come up with the idea. I'm just kind of like navigating my way through questions to have him find that idea, right? That's how we got the kids to eat greens, actually. It was just by asking a whole bunch of questions about what they think would make them smarter and taller and stronger and, all these kinds of things. It's so fun. Like, I don't know if you have kids or not, Jake, but it's a wonderful thing.
I don't yet. Rafi, who runs this channel with me, does. My friend who runs the channel, but I don't yet. I plan to, I believe, at some point. But I think kind of moving that to investing, I think that's the type of stuff that makes a good investor, is understanding why people are collecting these things, why people want these things. What is it about the gold cards? What is it about what is it about set collecting? What is it about, Pokemon, whether they intended this or not, and I'm sure they intended it, created like basically crack for collectors.
They knew exactly what they were doing.
Exactly. The numbering, the evolution, so that you can collect evolution lines, you can collect whole sets with numbers. They have different rarity amounts. They're the hollow pattern, the differentiations, the different types of sets, then adding in the shining cards. Like everything is so smart. It'll be interesting to see where they go from here, because they're going to have to keep upping that, right, and keep adding more chase or new types of chase, or people will get bored. And
you can only reprint base sets so many times.
Yeah, but it creates all of that, which is why I say to people that Pokemon is going to very likely always have value, and part of why I put so much money into it was an understanding of like, what is it about the core thing here that makes it extremely collectible and enjoyable. And then I'm going to compare that to comic books. I'm going to compare it to sports cards. I'm going to study these markets pretty intensely. I'm going to look at all the chase cards. I'm going to study their price points for years to see when things moved, when they didn't move, understand the cycles of like that 30-year-olds like to collect what they had when they were 10, like understanding those patterns to increase your odds, basically, of investing in stuff that people are going to want, and where the supply and demand fundamentals are going to be there to back it up over time. But all of it is so speculative. Like you can increase your odds, but like it's I think you're shooting for slightly over 50% here, just like in the stock market, the 58% idea. Although I think what's interesting about Pokemon, which is where I disagree with you about stocks, is it was so easy to make $1 million in Pokemon, even if you weren't that good, because of the flipping, the margins, and the influencers. So like,
and why isn't everybody a millionaire who has Pokemon cards?
Why isn't everyone? So all the people who had like the businesses and the influencers are, if they sold it or they put it back into Pokemon product. But people who were mass buying like all these promo cards and then grading them, building it, and then flipping them, it was so easy if you happened to be in at the right time and believed in it to do that. Now, even now, I think that it's still reasonably easy to, if you have connection specifically and you have a channel to pump it, basically, like, I mean, we'll see how these like new Japanese promos do, but I would witness people basically saying, buying up a bunch of a card, having a channel, having a video saying this is going to be great. And then it goes up a huge amount and then they sell into it, or they don't because they do believe in it and that they think that's going to, extend over time. But, I bought a ton of level X cards, like mint level X cards for like $1 to $5. A lot of them are selling for like $1,000 right now, all day. No one else was buying them. No one wanted them. They thought that they weren't going to go up, these types of things. But like, if you believed at all in Pokemon and you thought that any of these, these boxes were scarce, the numbers were all there, and all it was going to take was demand or interest around those, it would have been so easy to just massively buy out like whole sets of things, hunt thousands of copies. With $50,000, you could corner, whole areas of the entire market. Now, people didn't do it, I think, because they didn't think that that would go up. They didn't believe in that. It was more relegated just to first edition base, just to a few higher end items. People didn't think that the demand was actually going to ever move into those things. Whatever they tell you, they didn't, because they didn't put their money into those things. And now that it has moved into the middle, I'm predicting that the modern isn't going to get there, because I'm worried that there's so much more supply in the modern, and I'm worried we're at a high demand right now, and that demand is actually going to dip. But I could be completely wrong, and the same thing could happen again, where the people massively buying modern right now, we may find out that not nearly enough was printed, and a lot more people come into Pokemon and they see the same type of huge growth. So true. I think all of that stuff is very, very different than the stock market to me, and buying blue chip, and again, it depends on what you're buying, I suppose. But, it's like, buying massive amounts of things that are pretty rare for like $1, being able to grade them. You can't grade a stock, grade that, which then creates this really ridiculous artificial, duplicator on it, because people don't, people like just having graded cards, and there are things that get 10s that shouldn't really get a huge duplication because they're not that hard to get, or there are tons and tons of 9s, right? If there are tons and tons of 9s, the 10s are also overvalued, because how many people really care about getting a 10 over a 9? A lot right now, but maybe not in the long run. Like all of those types of things. I'm sorry, I'm speaking so much. I apologize.
No, this is cool. I'm learning just with your viewers too at the same time. This is cool. I mean, there's some things that I do. There are some things I do think about. For example, a lot of the low pop cards are like, oh, low pop, it's rare. And it's like, well, maybe it's because just people didn't submit that card. I mean, we're going to get this huge rush of stuff, and, that's a whole nother conversation. But, does that make my PSA 10 Weedle, valuable than other cards, more valuable than other cards because there's just less of them? I mean, to a point, yeah, there's people who want to, and would pay for the completion of their set, but there's only so many of those versus like the actual value of the card, its relation to playability, and there's so many levels for sure. My head went to, while you were talking, this idea of, when I asked the question, like, why isn't everybody millionaires yet? And it's likely because people didn't want to put in the time to become the millionaire during that time, or they didn't have the foresight like you and others who kind of not necessarily predicted, but had the idea that this could happen and things could go up. But, I know I
never predicted this, and I would have guessed that Pokemon probably should have doubled to tripled in value if you actually asked me. And I made $50 to $100 on certain cards. So I never, ever predicted that type of insane growth.
Thank you for that clarification. I have a friend who, she was an avid snowboarder, loved snowboarding more than anything. And she, being a very prominent businesswoman, had a connection with somebody who came up to her and she was like, hey, we should do a clothing line together for snowboarding. And she was all about it because she's obviously a snowboarder and she loved it. And so she sat in the first meeting and they started talking about the business and the model and everything that would happen and all that would need to be done and the stores they were going to open and all these things. And she's like, you know what? I'm out. Even though this is a $1 million opportunity, I'm out. And she was telling this story on stage once, and it really hit me because she knew then that it was going to affect her love for the hobby of snowboarding. And I think that there's obviously a line there between hobbyist and investor, and everybody's in a sort of different place there. And I think it's important for us to know where we all each fall on that line, thus then supporting decisions that we make or understanding when we seem to be acting out of place or out of where we think we should be. Sure. And maybe that can help people understand whether we're making irrational decisions. But like, can you be a very wealthy investor in Pokemon and a hobbyist? And I don't know. And again, that's part of me trying to figure out, like, okay, what parts of this do I like? And, you know, that I have cards and I don't care what the prices are, but I kind of do care what the prices are. Yeah. Like, am I going to flip these things? I don't know. I'm as a new investor / collector / hobbyist / YouTuber, I guess, it's still unknown to me. So I don't know. I think I just appreciate these conversations because now I can even unpack what's going on up here.
Absolutely.
And together we can kind of figure things out, and it's helpful for me and hopefully everybody else.
And that's particularly important if you're leveraging yourself on credit cards as an investment, right? So like, if you're not very clear that I'm investing and you're doing really risky financial behaviors, that I think is not smart decision making. Whereas for you or someone who has the money basically to do this, and it's to me on the surface much more reasonable to be like, you know, I don't know if I'm ever going to sell these. I don't know if I'll be able to sell them when the time is right, because I like them so much and they're part of my identity and part of my collection, and I'll keep them even though I think I'm going to lose money. I kept a lot of cards that I was very, confident I was going to lose money if I kept them, because they were my cards. I didn't want to sell them. And, the argument could be made, right? I could have sold them and then bought them back or something at lower prices. But I graded most of these cards myself. I was tracking down the mint cards. Am I going to get the exact card that I graded, that I went through that process, that I had that memory of pulling, and it becomes difficult to sell because of that emotionalness. Whereas stocks, I have a little bit of that. And I think that I think you're pretty connected to Tesla, and I've heard you talk about Tesla a good amount, and you're I saw you holding a thing of alcohol.
Elon sold Tesla tequila. I don't drink that stuff. It's a collector's item to me. Oh. He kind of likes to troll people and have these things like the flamethrower, the Boring Company flamethrower. I mean, it's very similar to that. So I have a couple of those. I actually am a Tesla Y owner. I've been driving a Tesla since 2016. And that's how I got so confident in the company, was just what I was actually in. And I do have some other stocks in different niches and such, but I'm very, very much probably on the cusp of Tesla fanboy. You could probably say that.
Yeah. And so it's like, is it are you really investing in Tesla? Or if you're being honest to some degree, are you also loving and enjoying being part of the journey, and that's being built into the price that you're willing to pay, or your feeling of not wanting to sell? Very likely it is. And that's true for stocks. I think it's more true for collectibles often. Mm-hmm. There's also the fear of missing out on profits, which is a whole different thing. That's a big part of, and that's the greed cycle that causes bubbles basically in markets, is that the fear of missing out on profits. The thing that actually stabilizes markets is actually the connections to the collectibles. And so what I look for is like that people love the stuff as an investor, where, and the famous tulip bubble that we experienced. What I think about with the tulip bubble is what happened here is that it became all about the money and making money and the fortune. And when everyone's focused on the money, when you look at all the YouTube channels and everyone just talks about the money and people are only focused on the expensive cards, and those are the ones that bring all the views, you have a tulip mania situation forming, because people are no longer actually buying the items. They're buying the perceived, money that they think that they're going to make, or the value in it.
Right.
And that's
Same thing with Beanie Babies. Beanie Babies went through the same thing.
Yeah. And that's where that inflation, that irrational inflation happens, that because people are not correctly evaluating what that item means to them or what they even think it means to other people.
Sorry, though, we can't change the way people think often. Like this is it. This is the way it is, right? And this is the environment we're playing in. And I think, again, to your point, the more we can educate ourselves about this, the more we can understand it, the better. It doesn't mean you have to be thinking about it 24/7. I think that you can do this, quote unquote, on the side, if you will, and still have it be a hobby and have fun with it and make money. Like, I really do believe that that's possible. But if you're just
the problem with
all
this
the
stuff,
time,
though, is even if like they don't change their opinion on it, the reality is that all these people are going to dump their product immediately when stuff starts going down, because they didn't actually have the connection, the value connection at those high prices. Mm-hmm. And it's just what happens in every market. Like and people say people aren't going to sell for lower than they paid because they're not going to want to take a loss. And it's like, that's just not how anything has ever functioned. If someone can give me an example of a market where like people no longer wanted the items and they didn't try to sell them because they refused to take less, I mean,
they're worried about the price going down even more, right? They want to get as much from it as possible. Humans, to speak to us again, we often will do things because we fear losing something more than we actually want something or to gain something, right? We're more likely to take action if there's a possibility of losing something. So that's why, like, once things start going down, we're afraid, we start selling, dumping, it brings the price down even more, bringing then more people on to say, oh, this is tanking. And then of course there's some people, and this is where I try to play. It's like, wow, I see that happening over there, right? I'm unplugged from the matrix. Yeah. So I can go, discount, right? And I can potentially find some reserves that I've put aside. And that's how I do a lot of my accounting. Any sort of money that I have in Pokemon had once been set aside, and it had been accumulating for years, and it's been sitting there. And then this opportunity came by, and it didn't do anything to any of the other parts of my finances because it was literally reserved for this.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Sorry.
I mean, the positive of all of this is that I'm also hearing a growing voice of, I can't wait for the prices to come down so I can buy, that feels very genuine and about the cards and not about trying to make money on the way up. So there's a lot of collectors who have joined. This is my feeling, just being all over the place, just like you. There are a lot of collectors who are not looking to get in at lower prices to make money, but who really want to own the cards and are working to be patient or trying to spend within their budget. And so there were a lot of investors and people who came in looking to flip and trying to make money and talking all about the money. But there's also a lot of new collector demand that I think is in the market. And so where those prices establish themselves, they're not going to come back to what I think would have been sort of like would have made more sense in terms of steady, slow growth that we saw in like 2019. I think we're going to probably come down to a higher point, quite a bit of a higher point, because I do think that Logan Paul and all the influencers changed Pokemon very radically, because it brought a lot of like just eyes and awareness on an amazing, fun thing to do with your time.
Yeah. So do you believe, you had said this once before, I'm curious where you stand now, that the first edition base set Charizard is going to go back down to 70?
No. I mean, in that video, I said that I if someone gave me 100 to 1 odds of it going to 80K, I would definitely take that.
Okay.
And my
point, most of your comments were about that, actually, in that video. This is funny.
Oh, with Charlie, you're speaking specifically?
Yeah.
So I was basically saying that, and I said that specifically, that if someone offered me, 1 out of 100, and my point was that it can go to 80. Where I actually think it's going to go, I wouldn't say, because I don't think it's appropriate. I don't like when people are saying that it should quadruple or that it should be $1 million. When I said that it could go to 80 or it could go to $1 million, it was to not say that I think, I don't give my actual evaluations of cards ever, is actually the secret of this channel. One, because I keep that for myself. I'm not giving everything away for free, honestly. And two, because I have analytics that actually back up where I think that card should go. That may or may not be right, because so much of it is based on my speculation, based on what I feel from the market.
Right. And there's 1,000 variables and other things,
Exactly.
external factors. But
exactly. But I also don't want to say, I don't want to influence it.
Right. Well, so by saying 80 or a million, you've covered your bases. Like, you're going to be probably right, and somewhere it's going to fall in between. So,
well, I'm not saying that. I genuinely am not saying that to not be wrong.
No, I know.
Genuinely, I think that there's clearly a calculation that could go into that around, like, you don't want to say something and then be wrong. For me, it's actually, I don't want to say something and influence it one way or the other. But I think the appropriate influence is that it could go to 80. And if people are buying that card because they think it's going to go to 1 million, that's artificial craziness, because that isn't necessarily true. It could, but not that it will. And so when Charlie and Zach, Gem and Pokemon come on and they say that they think that card's going to be worth $1 million in a few years, to me, like, I don't agree. I think that's a near, like, maybe, but why weren't you buying it? Why wasn't everyone buying it at those lower prices? They're basing the value, it's this interesting sort of thing of, like, one of my friends just sold, he bought that card for $700, and he sold the 350K one. One of my good friends in the hobby bought for $700, and I mean, unbelievable, right? Return on investment there. It's important to understand where these cards came from and how quickly these evaluations that never existed, that if someone a year ago had said this card would be worth 350K, they would have been laughed out of the community. Now these same people are saying it's going to be worth over $1 million.
Right. I mean, same thing happened to Kathy Wood, who said that Tesla stock would be, 3,500 at one point, and now stock adjusted it is, and she was laughed off the stage as well. So I think that the right approach, if there was one, is when you hear somebody say it's going to go to 80, or you hear somebody say it's going to go to 1 million, is to go, why would they say that? And then dig deeper, right? Like, that's my approach. Why would they say it? They're saying it for a reason. So let's figure out what that reason is. And you've obviously eloquently shared that. And same thing for 1 million. So now that I have more information from other people who are involved in different ways, I have, like you said, more things stacked in my favor to make the right decision. Right. And this is sort of the calculated approach I'm taking with a lot of these cards and such. And yes, some of it's speculative, some of it is more analytical, some of it is partly emotional. And it's hard to remove it entirely, but it's just so fascinating. I'm just so enjoying being a part of the community, and have been so warmly welcomed by so many people. And it's just fun, because I don't know my place in this space yet, other than, I'm the guy with the really cool camera equipment who can make these cards look good. Like, that's a legit approach that I took. I want to be known as that guy, but there's more to cards than just how they look. There's so many lessons to be learned, and especially with investing and things related to money, which then relate to your family and personal life and food and health and mental health and so many things. So, who knows where this will go for me, but I'm going to continue to enjoy it. Part of the encouragement that I have as well to share these videos is, like, I'm just sharing my collection and where things come from. And I feel like that adds value to whoever ends up with those cards in the future, whether it's my own kids because they get bequeathed, or the next person who chooses to buy my Lucky Stadium card. They're going to have a really interesting story to go behind it. And I know more than anything, stories also sell. Stories add value. And that's part of my goal with the channel. So
your point on the Tesla stock, and digging a little bit into the Charizard, if you don't mind. So what I would say is I 100% agree with you that the right way to think about it when someone makes an assessment is analyze, does this assessment make sense? So, and what I've said on the channel a number of times is something like that. Are these items very different now than they were a few years ago? And so just because no one assessed that value a few years ago, now they're assessing that value because they have new information, whether that new information is that they know a bunch of people interested in buying that Charizard. They have insider information that they know that people are still looking for it at higher prices. And so that's part of why they're quoting it. The fact that a lot of us, including me, know a number of the people who own the Charizards, and we don't think that they're going to sell. lower. So even if they don't agree with the evaluation, like Gary himself said, he thinks they should be $150,000 cards. His evaluation on them personally in an interview, he's not selling them at 350K because, you know, he doesn't want the money and he just wants to keep the Charizard, you know, and that's another thing.
I mean, I was very surprised to see him sell one to Logan Paul, and he said he almost cried when he left with it. I mean, he has emotional attachments to these things. They're priceless.
Right. You know, and so with Tesla, you know, when this person made this evaluation, because I don't know the history of Tesla at all, really, but when the person made the evaluation, did she understand something that the other people didn't understand?
You're exactly.
And saw the future growth in the product and had those things to back up. So why, but the problem with that, because I think it's a false equivalency in this case, unless they have that insider information that they're not sharing of the higher end people who are willing to buy it, which I don't have access to. I know a few people who are looking for that Charizard right now, but aren't willing to pay that price. And I know a bunch of private offers that were made on the Charizards that were. So I actually have a lot of insider information and behind the scene knowledge. And I don't see clear reasons other than hype and that the demand is going to keep growing for those things to go up. Whereas maybe she had insider, or not even insider, but just knowledge that, you know, about this person running the company, about his plans, really believed in the technology, believed that what they were going to do with the cars, whatever the time frame.
Yeah.
Was.
You're right. Kathy Wood, who from ARK Invest, her company goes deep into research and. You know, the street was just saying one thing about Tesla. It's just a car company. It's just a car company. It's just a car company. She's like, no, it's not just a car company. Here are all things with numbers and calculations. And she said that her base case was like $2,000 a share. And the bull case, or excuse me, the bull case being like $14,000. I mean, I'm throwing numbers out here and things have changed even more. Prices are going up, battery day, other announcements, new information. And it's just kind of taking a different approach, a more detailed researched approach, and not just listening to what everybody else is saying. And that, I think that's a big lesson, is like, there's going to be a common thing or feeling about anything. And as long as you sort of zoom out and see everybody there and go, okay, is that where I want to be? Or am I over here? Or why are they behaving that way? Or why are they saying these things? Then I can at least make some sort of sense of things from my end and learn, at least, if anything. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, who knows, really? There's so many factors, like I said, and I think that it's just, more than anything, it's just fun to have levels within this hobby. Yeah. And anybody can take any position and talk about and specialize in anything. And I think that's really neat. And I love the approach you're taking. I love the approach Rev's taking with more of the entertainment factor and going vintage, and you know, and I love the approach, like, everybody's unique. And I think that if you're a creator, when you start to fall into that trap of, oh, well, they're doing it this way, I got to do that too, that's when you can get into trouble. Same thing with collecting. Just because everybody else is doing it, it means something, but does that mean you need it too? So
we're probably close to out of time for today, because I know that you need to go be with your kids and do other things. I guess to end it today, you know, just talking a little bit about how you see the market and kind of, if you want to give a little bit of some of the stuff you're going after, you know, where do you think things are going to go? You know, just anything you want to share.
Thank you. You know, I'm obviously very aware of some of the ups and downs that the market has had recently. And I think within the market in whole, there's little markets within it, right? And that's kind of where I want to find particular niches within the Pokemon space and just kind of learn about them as much as possible. You know, every once in a while, I'll feel compelled to research a card and potentially pull the trigger on it, like with the Dialga, because it's just so interesting to me. And I do feel like, you know, I don't have like an emotional attachment to that card, but I do have an attachment to it because it does, to me, present itself with a really fun story, as well as a good investment opportunity as well. Just kind of underrated. I always try to look where everybody else isn't, right? And so when I found out about this card and I saw it had a low pop, and I did more research and I found tons and tons of people were trying to submit it and nobody was getting a grade 10. It's only, of all the submissions that went to PSA for this Dialga, only 15% came back PSA 10. So it's super hard to grade, much like a lot of the, you know, the level X Charizard, which has a pop of 103 when there's been thousands submitted because it's just foil all the way around the edges and stuff. And you're like, wow, that's like, for me, I'm just like, wow, I can't even believe I'm saying these things because I didn't know anything about this until recently. And it's because I'm interested. I'm having fun at the same time. And so I'm learning about these things. I'm learning the language. And when I learn the language, and then I can sort of at least have some ammunition when it comes to, figuring out what I want to spend my money on and such. I really love the cards that have stories tied to them, especially like certain promo cards like this. Mario Pikachu is my all-time, like I'm never probably going to let go of that, although the price is like going crazy right now. I just can't imagine letting go. I can imagine collecting more of them, in fact. And recently, and I talked about this on Radar's podcast, but with the new special delivery Charizard and just like researching interesting and weird and cool promo cards, I discovered this card called Lucky Stadium. And on the Lucky Stadium card, there is Charizard with Pikachu on his back, and then Pichu happens to be on his back, and they're flying over New York. And then I just kind of dug into this card a little bit more. It has a PSA pop of, I think, 118 or 150 or something like that. And I just got so interested in this. And I feel like there's a really interesting story with relation to the artwork on it and the artwork of the new special delivery Charizard, which everybody's talking about these days. So again, everybody's talking about something, special delivery Charizard. I hope I get one. Who knows? Pokemon made some mistakes with special delivery Pikachu. They're trying to set limits now and all these other things. That'll just be interesting in and of itself. But then I go, okay, like, why is this card here? Why is it important? What does it represent? What's the story behind it? And then I dug deeper and I found the Lucky Stadium card, and I'll show it here on the camera in case people are interested. But there's Pikachu on Charizard, just like the special delivery. But they're flying over New York, Empire State Building in the background. I'm not sure if those are the Twin Towers back there, but in digging more deeply into this, I found a couple Pokemon historians who I found out so much cool information about. And now I'm in love with this card and special delivery Pikachu or Charizard even more now. And the story behind it was that it opened on November of 2001. And we kind of all know what happened a couple months before 9/11. Yet it opened in New York, in Rockefeller, like planned. And it did so much for the community and being able to bring some joy to the community that was there, especially the kids. Like nobody was going outside during this time. And here Pokemon moved forward to open this up, and it became this amazing place where you can go and get these cards, and you can get 2 cards if you've got a special invitation postcard on that day. This Lucky Stadium and the Pokemon Center card, which I actually just got in the mail today because I wanted to complete this story. And I just really love like this whole theme here. And I actually brought Grace and Julie, who I found, these historians. You can actually check them out at PokemonCenterNewYork.com. Grace actually owns one of the Volkswagen Beetle Pika Bugs. Like there's just so many cool things that are here. Awesome. Anyway, she talked about why the store shut down.
Yeah.
And she was talking about the fact that like it wasn't being upkept. It was so huge, and there was animatronics and other things. They just started breaking down. And apparently Japan had heard that the place was kind of getting run down. And for Japanese culture, that wasn't okay. And they just shut it down and changed it to a Nintendo World. So now this like special delivery Charizard plus the Lucky Stadium, like there's more meaning behind it, right? And again, how many times are we just breezing over cards that we have no idea what they are because we just want that, VMAX Charizard at the end? I don't know. I think there's if COVID and the pandemic has taught me anything, it's the idea that sometimes we just need to slow down. Yeah. And much like how Pixar's Soul, we just need to appreciate the things that we have access to right now. And we can find things that we want to go toward, but at the same time, let's not miss out on the things that are here too. So anyway, long-winded to say, I'm just interested in promo cards. I have some, and of course, Japan is where it's at when it comes to the promo cards for sure. And a lot of those prices have been hiking up, and I've been finding some other really interesting ones. I found a card, gosh, I can't remember the name, but I just fell in love with it because it showed all the evolutions, and it was in the old WotC style trainer style card. And there's a story there, and I'm going to unpack it and learn about it and share it too. So that's kind of what I'm into.
Well, I think, that, I'll definitely be tuning into to all those videos.
Thank you.
I love the idea of going into the history of these cards, specifically little, very like interesting details, tracking down these people, which I'm interested to hear how you did that and who they are. there's a lot of I'm totally on board with that idea that we can gloss over, the card. We could either just see money on the card, we could see just the art on the card, we could also understand the story, where it came from. There's a lot to dig in there. So thank you so much for coming on. I do think that everyone here should go subscribe to your channel. And follow you, because I mean it sincerely, that I think that I'm very interested to see what you're going to do. I think you are very smart. I think you have a lot of skill. And I love, as you know, you see me around too. I probably in a lot of things, in a lot of different chats and different places, because I love Pokemon and I love the content. It's, at the end of the day, it's one of the things that I like to unwind is, hanging out on other channels, seeing what other people are doing. So I'll definitely be tuning in. I think that you're going to find a lot of fans and a lot of appreciators in my audience, I'm sure.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate you, Jake, and everybody here watching this. If you've stuck around to the end, I appreciate you so much. If you wanted to check it out, Deep Pocket Monster. And then I have a personal channel that I know Jake has seen before, Pat Flynn. That's my entrepreneurial stuff. I hope to see you there. Thanks so much. And, I hope this at least gets you thinking and hoping to increase your knowledge in the space so that we can make better decisions together. And that's, I think, a really important job. And Jake, I'm stoked that you stepped up to help people with that, because it's definitely needed. We can lose ourselves pretty quickly with some of this stuff, for sure.
Yeah. Doing my best. Hopefully it's good. All right,
thanks, man. Appreciate it.